Welcome to the E Free Lethbridge podcast. It's so great that you're joining us today. We got a bunch of questions to get to, but before we get too far, I want to introduce the people who are on our team today. We've got the Wonder Woman extraordinaire, Glenda Postman.
Nice pointing.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, Jeremy's had some practice pointing on the screen which way things are going. We have our lead pastor, the boss man, Jeff Heth.
Hey, everyone.
We have the lighthearted, Jeremy Light.
Hey, everybody. Good to be with you.
And first time on the podcast, we've got the mighty Matt Pauls.
The mighty!
Yeah.
Hello.
Yay, Matt Pauls.
Mighty,
Yeah.
that's a bit of an
Mighty
exaggeration.
We're just excited to have you because, you preached today. Maybe we'll have you on the podcast more. It depends on how it goes tonight.
Yeah. That's a good intro. I didn't even know that coming in.
Before we get into some of the deep stuff, it's time to kick things off with a fun morning question. So today's fun morning question: what profession, other than your own that you're doing right now, would you like to attempt? Yeah. So
I feel like before I went into Bible school, I wanted to be an architect, and I still think that'd be fun.
Wow.
Design things, design buildings.
Yeah,
You can have a name, the mighty Matt Pauls.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Business cards.
Yes, that'd be an extraordinary business card.
Right on. For a while, when I would answer this question, I thought, you know what, I'd love to try to be a radio DJ sometime, and that was it. But the one I've toyed with, I actually thought about going back to school a couple of years ago again, was just to get into law and be a lawyer. And I had one of my good friends up in Calgary talk to me about it, and I had to think, that'd be a lot of fun. He said, yeah, you don't spend much time in the trial room, but that wouldn't be as fun for me anyway. But yeah, just trying my hand at the law.
Interesting.
Wow. Mine is going to sound so lame after that. I am doing a counseling master's, so maybe that's a backup. But I don't know if I can say this, and we can't edit. I've been watching this show on matchmaking. I swear I could be a matchmaker.
Ooh.
Nice.
I feel like this is like needed in culture. There's like people wouldn't have to go on, I don't even know, dating sites.
Well, there's
Plenty
now.
of fish. Plenty of
really.
fish. I don't know. Matchmaking.
This is the new one on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
I haven't started it yet, but I'm very intrigued by the concept.
Taking people, match them up. That's almost like Jeff and a lawyer.
Yeah.
That's right. Almost.
I'd like to. Is there school for that?
I don't know.
I'm
I
sure
feel like
there
it's
is.
intuition.
It's just intuition. Yeah, that's good.
You're born with it.
Yeah. I would. Oh man. For a while, I wanted to be a pilot. But that might have been, my mom might have planted that idea in me, my parents, because the families of pilots got free passes. So that might have just been like something my parents really wanted me.
For sure.
But I think I'd be still in some sort of like public service type profession, like police or paramedic, something like that.
Matchmaking.
Matchmaking, clearly. Yeah, that's. I think I'd like to do something like that. Yeah. Pull people over.
Wow.
Detective, investigate. Yeah.
I feel like I don't know how to answer this question. So when I graduated, like actually all through high school, I wanted to be a nurse and then get my nurse practitioner. That's what I wanted to do. I did all my high school classes based on that, applied to all of the universities that I wanted to get into, and ended up getting into them. Went to a first week of school, dropped out, and it was like, I don't want to do school anymore. And I think it was always in the back of my head, oh, you want to do healthcare. And so I still have a really big heart for that. But then when I got into school, I got a degree to teach English as a second language. And so I've got that in the back of my pocket to always fall back on. So I can do that right now. But most recently, I was like, I want to become a barber.
Mm.
Yeah.
I remember you talking about your
like,
cool barber shop that you
yeah,
set up.
I want a barber shop that has a subscription base, so then you can subscribe to getting your hair done and stuff like that. So then like you come in every month and you have a free cut. I mean, you pay into it, but you also get some products with that. And yeah, I
The
don't know.
touch-ups, dude. The touch-ups.
Yeah, you get the touch-ups. Like if you want to come in and get your sides done again, you can get that done for free, which is a big deal because you might not always need a full cut. You might just need a quick, like a 5-minute quick trim. So yeah, I've got this business model. I'd love to become a barber, but I don't know.
We should have a vote to see who's most likely to do their job. You might win, Levi.
I think I'd win because I got a plan
maybe.
already.
I'm second.
Yeah.
But
I definitely see the matchmaking happening.
I think
That might
Not
be
even
going on already.
officially or
You-
unofficially.
you
Is it
might
your
not be
side
getting
hustle?
paid. You might not get paid for it, but
Oh,
I think
I'm
you're already
not
doing
paid.
this.
Yeah.
Or at least you're trying to do this. I don't know if it's been successful, but
It has been
Whoa.
successful. I can't even tell you, but
Oh.
but it's successful.
yeah.
I love the fun morning question. It's just lighthearted, and I like talking about these kind of things. So, I mean, if you guys want to participate back at home, tell us what you would do if you weren't doing your job currently. And if we don't know you, you might want to tell us what your job is currently so that we know what you're not doing right now. So, okay, it's time to move to getting to the message. So this week, the message was given to us by Matt Pauls, which we're so glad that you're with us today, Matt. And you're speaking on John 3:16 onward to verse 21, looking at this crazy love that God has for us, but also not just for us. It's bigger than that. It's for others and how we can actually bridge this love that we've been given to others as well. Mm-hmm. And Matt, you talked this morning about light breaking through the darkness. The big, wide cosmic scope of God's love that enters into a world that is hostile towards him. So for you guys, the question is, what drew you guys to the light?
Yeah, I think for me, that's an interesting question because it's been such a, the light has increasingly shone in my life, or I've walked further and further into it for such a long period of time, going back to my childhood. And but as I think about it, I wouldn't have been able to articulate it as a child, but I'd say two things. One, fear of the dark would draw me towards the light for sure. So hearing messages about being, going to hell or God's eternal judgment, those types of things. So fear of that drew me towards the light, but then also seeing on top of that, the light lived out in the lives of the people around me. So the example of my parents, the example of my Sunday school teachers, other adults that were influential in my life, seeing those things has drawn me to the light. And then I'd say at this point, it's become such a part of my identity that I just can't imagine any other way of living. So to almost like in John 6, where Jesus is like, to his disciples, do you want to leave too? And they're like, where would we go? They just like, I can't imagine it. So that's sort of where things are at right now. I just can't imagine living any other way.
Yeah, I go with Jared there too. I mean, for me, what drew me to the light originally was, I was afraid because I think maybe I grew up a little bit more in the end times movie spot there. Maybe Glenda can relate to me a little bit in this here. And I was so scared that Jesus was going to come back and not take me home. So, I mean, I would pray, hey, you know what, Jesus, you have to save me. So I often say that, I was scared and I needed to run to the light, and I did so every night in my prayers so I wouldn't be left behind in that way. But when I turned 18, it was also the intellectual side, and I just went through a period where I was like, am I just a Christian because I grew up in a Christian home? if I grew up in a Mormon home, would I be, on my Mormon mission at 18 years of age? If I grew up in a Muslim home, would I be, radical for Islam? And that sent me on a journey for truth. And that has really been enlightening to me over the last, 3 decades of searching for this. And I still have questions, faith questions. We've talked about doubt multiple times past year, but time and again, Christianity is the best answers, has the best answers to those questions that we don't know the complete answers to. And other world beliefs or, belief systems don't even come close to answering those major questions of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny, those sorts of things. And that's an outline that Rabbi Zacharias gave us here. So keep on running to that light in that way for myself.
I grew up we're at a similar age. I think that's what you're referring to, but I didn't grow up in the church. So I actually didn't grow up with any of this.
That's right.
Understanding of,
that's true.
My husband they would have read Hal Lindsey books at the dinner table. I think that's what it was. I've never read a Hal Lindsey book. I don't know. But I would say Fear of the Dark too, and very similar to Jeff, that I think at one point I sat and wrote down, I remember getting the encyclopedias. I don't know if you know what those are, but anyway, encyclopedias, the big
it's like
book.
Wikipedia today,
in
but in a book. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I remember getting out encyclopedias and pulling them out and looking at religions and writing pros and cons to these religions. So I feel like it was a little bit intellectual, Fear of the Dark as well. But I think that at some point I had to understand that I actually was in the dark. And I think for a long time I didn't understand that because I thought I was good and my family was good and we were kind, good people. So I think having an understanding of that wasn't enough, that wasn't good enough, that was helpful. And then also understanding that the light wasn't harmful. I think that there was a time where I actually thought the light was something that would sear you or burn you in some, I don't know if that's a good description of that. But I think realizing that it was more of a rescue beacon than it was this thing that would burn everything. And I think really when I look at it now, I don't think it was so bad, and it probably did really burn everything away, but I thought that going towards it would be painful because it'd be condemning, and I didn't realize it was freedom.
Yeah, I think, I had a similar experience growing up within the church. So then what drew me to the light is kind of drawing from within. But I had that experience where it actually became real in grade 11. And I think what drew me there was just that there was a higher purpose and calling within actually coming into that light. God's saying, not only don't just believe in me, but this is what I'm calling you to. And just struggling with what my purpose or something like that was within high school. I found that the scriptures actually offered something that's here, this is what your mission is. This is what you're just called to do. And I thought that was pretty cool.
You think that we would all run to the light, and yet we have this tendency to shrink and hide in our guilt and shame. What things have kept you guys from coming towards Christ, and what things make you guys shrink from relationship with him?
I was thinking about when Matt was talking today about how in Genesis, the serpent says, you will be like God, you will know him. And that word is experience him, that you get to decide for yourself what is good and evil, and you don't need to be told. You can have autonomy. It's the ultimate in individuation. You get to pick for yourselves. You can determine your own path, experience for yourself, decide what works for you and what doesn't, that you can have your own wisdom. And what do you need God for? I think that is kind of this thing that pulls us away from that. But then we realizing that again and again, the story of scripture tells us how God calls out and asks, where are you? And on what road are you now traveling? So this is the story over and over and over again that's told to us in scripture, just come. And he's constantly making a way. And I remember a number of months ago in church, I just had this picture of all these obstacles in the way to get to God. And that people are kind of we're kind of trying to climb over them. And he is just the king. He pushes every one of those obstacles out of the way to get to him. He comes right to you and just reaches out his hand. Like it's one little step, one little mustard seed of the faith that you need, that you get to trust in him. So I think even just that one little step sometimes feels monumentous, but when you take it, it is just like, you don't realize, again, like the searing comment, that you think it's gonna burn, but it's freedom, I think.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's so what drives me back towards darkness is that idea of like or the question or the doubt that God is good. So a little bit of that searing piece, but that there's something hidden in the dark that's better than what I can see in the light, or that I deserve, some reward of some sort, and that I get to decide what that is. And so that extreme individualism. And it goes right back to the kind of question that the serpent asked Adam and Eve, like, can you really trust God? Is he withholding something from you? Step into the shadow to see. So that, and then in terms of like shrinking from relationship, it would just be that piece that you talked about, Glenda, in terms of the shame. It's interesting. It's a little bit of the judgment piece that, and yet at the same time, it's also a little bit of Jonah, where like, I know you're a compassionate and gracious God, and you're going to forgive me, and I don't deserve your forgiveness. I deserve to be beat up or punished, and so I don't want to step into the light and receive your grace, even though that's what I desperately need, because what I need it to do is punish myself. So there's this fear of punishment, and yet this like fear of grace at the same time that plays both of those.
Yeah, I think most often it's just that sense of shame. And I tried to differentiate today, like there's guilt that needs to be addressed and shame. And guilt is like what I've done, and shame is who I am. And I think usually it's like more, this is who I am, and I'm ashamed to come before God, because it's like as if God didn't already know who I was, but I don't want him to see that and see that like, oh, okay, I've been in the Christian faith all my life. I've known this for so long, and I'm still struggling here. Or like, even like I mentioned in the sermon, like even past regrets of like, this is who I was, and then associating that with that's who I am. That sense of shame is just like, no, I have to clean myself up. I need to be made new before I can enter God's presence, even though it's in God's presence that you're made new. And so even though you can understand that on a head level, I think there's still something like at a gut level that just drives me away.
Yeah, and for me, it was, it's interesting, a contrast, a guy that I worked with before who came to Christ later on in life, he could really see God as his loving Heavenly Father. And what motivated him was God's love. And I just looked at that and said, wow, man, I want some of that, because God is my king. And I understood that I've been rescued. And so I do what he says, because he's my boss, he's my king, that sort of thing. But that'll only take you so far. And for him, God loved him so deeply that he also had to work on just being obedient at times when he didn't feel like it. But for me, it's that other side. It's I needed to, and I want to experience the unconditional father love of God, and just that warmth drawing me in there. So at times, like what Jeremy said there, I can feel, because I'm not good enough, because I haven't been perfect in obedience and holy, does God really want me to come to him? And so I shirk back from the light. But then, just knowing that side that my buddy experienced and that I see in the scriptures, that God always wants me to come to him. Draw near to God, James says, and he will draw near to you. And that's just what I got to do, is come to God, come to the light, and that light will come to me, and the light will overcome the darkness.
It just reminds me when you have little kids and they learn how to walk, and they're taking those first faltering steps. Like when they trip over something, you're not like, stand up. What are you doing? You erupt with like, wow, this is amazing. Look at you. And I just think that is the father heart of God. I mean, Romans 10, right, talks about like everyone who believes in him will not be put to shame. That's not the heart of our Father towards us. I think he's not disappointed in those things in us.
For sure.
I was about to make a joke and be like, I was that person who's like, get up, right? But
Yeah.
then you made your comments, then I'm like, those were too good. I can't make this joke now.
And you still did.
I still did. I blame myself. So Jesus offers a transformed life. Our sins no longer remembered. He just makes us new. How has God made you guys new?
It's an interesting question. I think, like, again, it's one of those weird things. I don't have that moment of coming to faith or like coming to a new belief. So I don't have that like insane light and dark experience. And sometimes it doesn't feel like there's transformation. But then when you look back over like a long period of time, you start to realize, okay, God is working. And it's not like a transformation event, but it is that journey. And I feel like, I mean, yeah, patience, even just a grace for myself and others, that's been a big thing. And even, I mean, it's a weird thing to talk about, but even humility, because there's a way that I acknowledge my own like failings a lot more than I did. I was so confident going into Bible school. Like I thought I had it together. And it feels like I have it a lot less together now, but that's not because I haven't grown. It's actually because God has kind of like revealed that, you know? And so I think that's a sense of growth too, but even though it doesn't feel like it always.
Yeah, I would, one of the areas, there's so many that Jesus has made me new, but my wife has helped me, getting into a marital relationship and seeing Janelle, how quick she was to be generous to people, how quick she was to sacrifice financially, how quick she was to do these things. Where me, I had to have everything planned out, everything organized, all that sort of laid out like that. And at first, it was like, whoa, that's out of control, Janelle. Like, we can't be so generous in that way. But really, God showed me his character through my wife and said, no, that is a way that I want you as a couple to reflect me. And so over the years, I have just become more and more generous and open-handed and less tied to money because God showed me himself through my wife. And that's what's helped me, become more sanctified in that area.
I'd say,
sorry,
go ahead. No, go, Glenda. Go ahead.
I'd say in all the ways I didn't plan, that's where he has made me new. Because there's lots of ways like I want to be made new, and I would say the ways that I didn't plan and also not the methods I would have planned either. So I think learning hard things about forgiveness through, like in the last number of years, through hard, grueling, sleepless nights. I mean, lots of those things are learned in suffering and hardship and dark times and asking God if he's really there and asking him what to do about something. So I would say in hard ways. I mean, some things are just like, it's like a gift. And sometimes it's like most of life is when you're walking down this road and step by step, you're walking with Christ. And every once in a while, he picks you up and places you on a new path of the road. But I would say most of it is the walk for me, like that daily faithful walk and the struggle of those things. Like, what does it mean to actually, like, the costliness of forgiving someone and resetting something and seeing people, the battle to see people in the way God sees them. So I'd say in some pretty hard ways. That's the way he's made me.
Yeah, I'd say recently it's in the relationship in my family. Within my household, just seeing some of my reactions to my kids and situations that would come up, and seeing a level of impatience and quick to anger, and just really asking God's help in that area. Really asking that the Lord would show my family through me what it means to be a father, and to see God's father heart in that. And so, yeah, I just felt like there was a few times that there was, and along with that, I guess, some resentment. If like you have this, when you're self-focused, self-absorbed, like you're the one that always empties the dishwasher, even though that's not true. Like there's clearly times that other people are doing it, but it's like, man, I must be doing this more than anybody. And just all of a sudden, there's been a few times, and it's something I'm still being shaped in, but like. Felt like this affirmation of like that was a patient response in that moment. You just did that without keeping score, and just these little affirmations along the way. It felt like God's been shaping that in me a little bit in my family. So they might have to like actually qualify that statement a little bit. I'll give them the option in the comments, but I feel like there's been some growth in that area.
I love your comment, Matt, about how it often takes us looking back at our lives to actually see how God's been making us new. I remember I'm going to butcher this, but I was in a Chinese class. I took Chinese when I was in college, and our teacher was explaining the difference between American or North American culture compared to that of Eastern Asia, and how often in America we are so forward focused and we don't really like looking back. And she was saying that it's kind of like you're going up the river, like you're paddling against the water, and you're just like focused going forward at trying to like battle and get through it. And it seems like you're not making a lot of ground going forward because it's just harder because you're going upstream. And but if you were in Eastern Asian context, you would be going upstream, but you would be looking backwards and seeing that the ground that you're actually making, the water that's passing you, is actually much greater than what it seems to be, like the amount that you're actually gaining. And there's all this water behind you that's flowing past you and is being affected by you and the actions that you have. And that's kind of like Jesus making us new. There's actually all this stuff that's getting past us, and we're slowly being changed. And when we're looking forward, but when we actually look back, we've been changed in mega ways. And so I love that reminder just to look back on our lives. I think there's
go ahead, Jer. I think there's a hesitancy to do that as well culturally, maybe in Christian culture in particular, a little bit Canadian as well, because of this like false humility idea that like we shouldn't celebrate our growth, or like as if we're taking pride in that in some way. So I think there's also that piece as well.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
But really, it's sort of like that measuring stick that we put our kids up against on their birthday and see how much they grew in the last year. Has nothing to do with them except like their genetics, and maybe some exercise and some healthy eating. But it's just a fun celebration. They're growing up, and I think we need those moments in our lives as well to like, oh yeah, I'm maturing in my faith, and having other people speak that to us gives us a bit of perspective on that too. So yeah, I think that's good.
I should do a measuring chart for my kid or kids as they grow up, and every time we do it every year, I'll give them a participation ribbon.
Yeah. Good job.
Congratulations. Yeah. You did it.
I love participation ribbon.
So we imitate God's love and costly sacrifice. He has built a bridge to us, so we become the people who then build bridges to others. What places have you seen bridges being built?
Yeah, and this is a pretty broad question here. I mean, we talk about in our vision building bridges to our neighborhoods and the world. And we also talk about one of our values being relationship. And so at all these different levels, like I see people and hear stories of people building bridges relationally at a person-to-person level. And that by far, spreading the gospel in this way at a person-to-person level is going to be the most effective. And so I hear people, typing me emails saying, hey, Pastor Jeff, I just had my neighbors over. I had them over for a party or whatever. And, they asked me about what I believe. And that's just exciting thing to me is people getting in the game in this way. And Janelle and I were over at somebody's house here a couple of weeks ago, and just getting to know people and getting at that level where you can have significant conversations. That's fun to me. Then there's that next level where you're in your small group or you're in your community group and you're starting to build, community identity. And that you get to, have fun with other people and build that relationship. And really that's what we're heading for, as a result of this summer series and the September 11 through 13 weekend is how do we as Christians infiltrate our neighborhoods So we can build bridges into that. And then the other area is corporately. How does the E-Free Church, us together collectively as a corporate entity, how do we influence our city? How do we influence the surrounding area here? And I mean, just the conversations that Myron is having at a city level in the area of affordable housing and how there's such a need there. We are excited about those things. And I mean, we do a variety of things, the stuff in the bus and, you know, putting out these activity packs and the missionaries we support, the $500,000 we send a year out, you know, beyond the borders of our country here. Exciting things that are happening there. And those are bridges being built in that way. Sorry, this excites me, passion thing. Hopefully I didn't steal this from everybody else.
Well, we got no more answers left.
Yeah, that's right.
No.
Stole it all.
What I like about this though is that so I'm going to take the question in a little slightly different direction, Levi, but because I think Jeff answered lots of the things. But what I like about it, what I was thinking about when Matt was talking today is that, like, the bridge building isn't all on me, right? So we can talk about doing it in community. And that's true. But we believe that God's already built a bridge of love. So really, all we're doing is like we're cutting the ribbon of the grand opening, or like, you know what I mean? Like we're really just trying to find places in our lives and in our community that God has already established these bridges of love, and we just get to kind of walk across them, help people discover them. Sometimes maybe do a little repair on them or whatever to make that connection stronger. But yeah, that's one of the things I was thinking about when Matt was speaking this morning is like, yeah, God did all this work already. So we're working off of his work. Man, I'm getting so excited. My hands are flailing. I knocked over my garbage can. All right.
I think so too. Like this is just, I mean, sometimes we can like peer over the people that are along our path, like look on really far down the road, but who are the people that God has placed in your path? You probably live beside them, work with them, go for coffee with them. Like these are the places, and that's just where we get to share the deep things, the intimacy of our life and our loves. And that's just a place where like our overflow of delight in God and this, and the heavy wrestles that we carry too, we just get to live them out there. And those are significant places with significant conversations that really matter. So who's God placed in your path? Who do you live beside? Who do you work with? Who are your friends who you've known for 25 years because you met them in baby group or whatever? Like where are those places? This isn't rocket science. Well, yeah, I don't know if rocket science is hard anymore, but anyway.
Yeah, rocket science is so easy now.
Yeah, totally.
It's not matchmaking, guys.
It's not matchmaking.
No matchmaking.
It's literally bridge building.
It was a whole answer.
Yeah.
Whoa. Oh my.
Yeah.
Well,
a good strategy, just so you know, is like get a cute dog. So when you go for walks, it automatically build bridges, and people are like, "Oh,
so how do we build bridges in our community? Cute dogs. Cute dogs is step one.
And go for walks. It's great.
Yeah, lots of walks.
Dogs actually can be that.
Totally
that
true.
Bridge. Yeah,
totally. Everybody buy their dogs. Everybody's to relive it. I'm like, oh yeah, you have the German Shepherd.
And they'll stop and talk to us. Like we would walk the green strip before. We walk with the dog. Man, like people talk to us all the time. It's great.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of it. Like you don't have to overcomplicate like this bridge building of, okay, I need to go start an initiative, you know, like God made this bridge of love to us, and our job isn't to like go make new bridges like Jared said. It's more to extend the bridge that's already been built to us. And ideally, it's just basically causing as little resistance to what the work that God is already doing in our neighborhood. So all the relationships that I have, that can just be an extension of God's love to me, and I'm passing that love through and on to the people that I come into contact with. Like it should never stop with me, which sometimes I think what happens when you focus like, I just have a personal individual relationship with God and it's vertical, and you never think about like his love comes into me and I reflect that and shine that out to the people around me.
Totally.
Yeah. I had a prof once that was was, I don't know if I fully agree with this, but was really against like having to utilize things in order to have that bridge of love being built. So like we're kind of joking about dogs, or like there is this mindset that we need something in order for us to do ministry, or in order to build a bridge. And the truth really of the matter is God has built this bridge to us, and that's all that we actually need. We don't need a dog. We don't need a coffee to be between us, or we don't need something in common. This is something that you can do with your neighbor if they are 30 years older than you and you have nothing in common. You can still be that person who cuts the ribbon, shares Jesus, and sees this bridge that's built. And so that would be my encouragement. I think it's something I'm still learning. I'm not perfect at that. But now that I guess I'm an adult and I own a house and I've got neighbors, and I'm like, maybe I should be doing this. Yeah. I think that's going to wrap up our time of looking at the message. It's time to move to the hot seat. The hot seat is one of my favorite parts of the show right now for the summer. It's just part of our summer series for the podcast. And it's where I get to grill you guys with other people's questions, and I don't have to answer any of them. It's awesome. And so we got a few different questions here. The first one, well, there's one here that's kind of a little funny. Someone, Glenda, is asking if you can match make them. Is that possible?
Yes. Just wait till you hear the fee that she charges, though.
There's no name. It's an anonymous one, but they want you to answer, and I'll tell them if you do say yes, then I'm going to tell them to send you their information.
All right, I'm in.
Yep, Glenn is in. So if you would like to be matchmade, then just send her your information, and she'll get right on it. I don't know how much she costs, but I'm sure it's expensive.
Yeah.
Does it come with guarantees? Those are the
that's
these are all the
right.
things you need to ask. So, yeah.
Oh man, that's so good.
So our next question here says, rumor has it at the practice service, I'm assuming today's
It's
service.
always a great question when it starts with rumor has it.
Yeah.
I'm hooked.
Yeah.
There was singing, and we were encouraged to sing. Will this be the case with the in-person services, even with the protocol that EFRE put out that says congregational singing is prohibited?
Ooh.
That's a great question.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there is singing there. You can sing along with what we're doing there. Everybody's who has a mask can sing in this way. We are saying that this is to be, say muted, but in the same vein, we are having congregational singing there. So feel free to sing along.
Okay.
I didn't know that. That's good to know.
Good answer, Jeff.
Should we sing right now?
You can sing right now.
No, anytime that they're singing over a Zoom call, it's
my
not a
favorite.
good time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. When Jeff decided to sing a solo for us, he just wanted part of the choir. It was awesome.
During the staff meeting, I told Ken to lead this. I hit Alt-A on my computer, and I don't know what happened, but I didn't mute myself.
Nothing happened.
And I was just singing so loud, cutting Ken off, till finally Jody, who was the host of our meeting, muted me. I saw that come up on my screen. You've been muted by the host. Oh my!
The ultimate shame.
It took her way too long to do that. We're probably like a minute into the song.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone was just like this.
It was really awkward, actually.
I took my headphones off because
Mark Dick told me
This is
that
how
he
I
can
worship in
unmute.
Zoom meetings.
Mark Dick told me he can unmute people, so I just mouth the words because I'm afraid he's going to unmute me.
You can't do that.
Only in Teams we can all mute and unmute each other in Teams, but in
that's
Zoom only the host can. So this was back when we were in Teams, and he would he would try. Totally, he would try. But if you log in as the administrator, then you also can probably mute and unmute people, which I sort of am wondering, Jeff, like who else was who else had co-hosting duties on that staff meeting call? Maybe there's I could start my career as a detective now. Yeah.
There you go.
They unmuted me just to see if I was singing, and guess what? I was belting out, bro.
He was belting it out, and the way that Zoom works is it like detects audio. So then like it was kind of like Ken would be going, and then all of a sudden switch to Jeff, and then switch back to Ken, and back and forth. And so I just took my headphones off. Yeah. Because then the music did not match up, and it was.
Jeff, you didn't notice that all of us were just like.
No,
he was worshiping God. He was in the moment.
I was
doing. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
I wish I recorded it. It would have been the best thing.
I'm glad it didn't get recorded.
We gotta make memes.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The other thing you got to watch out for on Zoom calls is if Glenda turns off her screen. Yeah, you told us this publicly.
I told you that.
Okay.
I remember this.
Just watch out. Yeah, it was in a peer min meeting, so half the staff knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's probably taking a picture of somebody's funny face.
I have a really
Probably
good
Luke.
I got a really good story with Luke, and I'm working on one with Jeff.
Yeah.
Because they make the funniest faces, and all of them, like they're never praying, because I'm like, oh, that's a little too much. But like Luke's like looking off, like look at the things he does.
The hat with like the
hat backwards, stretching his head back, like
the like trying to read the screen, but he doesn't want to put his glasses on. Like, he's not even here to defend himself. We're just roasting him.
That's kind of argument.
Nice.
Oh man, Luke. Luke's thing is the swaying. That's what I always. He's a swayer. Okay, we got one last question here, unless there's another one that pops in. At times, does God seem cruel? Maybe I'll reword this. Is God cruel? I think is the real question here, but you can also answer, does God seem cruel to you?
I think there's seasons of my life that I've asked that too. Like I've thought, okay, I know you're good, but I don't know, this doesn't seem kind. I think there's seasons where I have asked that, like, this just doesn't seem kind. Like why? But just reminded that like, I don't see, it's like I see in a movie, I see like 10 seconds of it, and I know better than the person who wrote the movie what this should look like. So I think over and over again, when you read of people telling about who God is, I don't think he's cruel, but I do think that that's a question I wrestled with too.
Yeah, I can think of like specific times where it felt like that for sure. One example would be back when we were doing fertility treatments to have biological children, and we were engaged in a treatment that seemed everything was like working out amazingly, like perfectly, and it just seemed like God was like affirming every step of the way right up until the pregnancy, and then the pregnancy didn't work. And so it felt very much in that moment like God had like set up our hopes and then just pulled the rug out from underneath of us. And so there are times, which was part of what made it especially devastating, because you start to dare to hope, this is working out, and then nothing worked. And so there are still times where I'm like, okay, when's things are going well, is he going to pull the rug out again? And so there is that aspect of having to like trust that he is good, that he is kind, and loving in this for me. So yeah, there's been times for sure where it seems like, man, like I would have been, I don't know, it's hypothetical, but like almost I would have been okay if we didn't get pregnant. But why did you have to build up these circumstances to make it seem like we were headed in that direction?
Yeah, I think I feel like me and Jordana really relate to that, and we had some of our own difficulties just getting pregnant, and Yeah, I remember actually you shared that with me on one of our trips to camp once, and yeah, I really relate to that. I'm feeling for all those people who have wrestled through that right now, and who are going through that currently, and sometimes it's hard not to feel that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think too, Matt really talked about that a little bit this week, right? Verse 17 doesn't talk about God did not send his son to condemn the world. He sent him to save. So I just think like at every way, he just keeps making a way, no matter how people screw up, no matter what happens, he just keeps making a way. So that does not seem cruel to me.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, there's a level where we're talking at a personal level. And for me, I mean, where this, was made real to me was through my cancer. At the time, you're asking the question to some extent why, but now I look and I'm, 15 years past my cancer treatments and diagnosis. And I often tell people, I say, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I wouldn't change it for the world, for what God has done in me and through me. And he has used that for good. And then there's this level of is God cruel? No, he has entered into a sinful, broken world. He sent his son, and this is what Glenda said, to come in, and he has suffered as we did. He has gone through the same temptations as we did, and he has provided a way for us to step out of this. And he has made a bridge of love to us to walk out of this. He's entered into this here. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing thing. Once again, unique to Christianity in this way. And then there's the questions, well, what about all that other evil in the world? What about this this explosion that happened in Beirut here? Like, where is God in the midst of this? Well, this is the world that we live in. And it's set up in this way because of our rebellion against God. And God enters into this broken world, and he brings light into this, and he brings salvation in the midst of this here. And this is where one of these things where I look at the question of evil, the question of suffering, the question of the nature of God, and the biblical worldview has by far the best answer. Does it answer every question all the time? Perfectly, so it makes complete sense to me? No, sometimes some of the suffering it doesn't seem to have a good purpose to me, but it has a great sense in the economy of where we sit as, it has a better understanding in the Christian worldview than it does in any other worldview.
I always think of that too. Like, some of the things, like we lost our youngest baby, and I wouldn't say that, Jeff. I wouldn't say what you said, that weigh the pros and cons. It was worth it in the end. Would not say that. Missed out on a life, missed out on like raising a child. I still can't say that, actually. It's been 22 years. But I can say that I know the heart of God, even sometimes when I ask questions about the hand of God. So for me, it's just like going back and back again, saying like, I know, I just need perspective. I just need a perspective on his heart towards me. And then recognize that I'm going to have questions about like the hand of God. Like, why would you not remove this from me? And I get to ask that of him. And he wants to hear that from us because that's opening the door to a relationship with him. But I think I've had to like go back. What is the heart of God for me? So going back and reading, knowing scripture, memorizing, and that's been the battle for me.
Well, I think that's all the time that we have for the hot seat. If your question didn't get answered, we will try our best to hit it up next week, or if you want, you can resubmit it for next week. I'm sorry about that. We just are running out of time here. And we have to move to community time. Woo! Yay!
We need jingles. We need jingles.
Yeah. It's hard because I add the jingles in for the just the audio portion of the podcast that comes out every week. So when you're live, you can't really, maybe I could do it. I just don't have the tech available right now to actually do it. So
we can
ding, there you go.
There we go.
There's the community time.
I know Jeff likes to
jingle.
sing on
Yeah.
so maybe he could just sing the jingle for us each time.
So previously we were talking about how, well, Matt, you talked about this cosmic scope of God's love in your message, and really that often we have this tendency to personalize and privatize our faith. So for God so loved the world, we make that, well, God so loved me and God so loved you, and we make it very personal. What are some ways that we can recapture and reflect the cosmic scope of God's love?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult question. In one way, I mean, the love of God doesn't discriminate against anyone. So I think there's a way that we selectively choose who we love, and that, I mean, you can go in your community and be like, who's the first person I see? Like who can I be loving? That anyone that comes into my I guess my range, my context, where I'm living here, and that just finding those barriers and the ways that we like. I mean, you don't consciously, and you probably wouldn't use the word discriminate, but like the way that you like pick and choose and say, okay, that's a person that like, it's like we filter people almost of like, is this person someone that I'm going to choose to love or invest my time with? And I think there's a way of just whoever comes, whatever they look like, whatever their life looks like, I'm going to love whoever comes into my world, I guess. But
yeah, that's good, Matt. That really kind of captured my imagination or a little bit when you were thinking or when you were talking about that in the sermon, and yeah, it just got me thinking like, okay, we just swim in the culture of individualization and or individualism, and everything's about me, and even in the like, so then my mission is to reflect the global scope of God's love. And I wonder again if part of recapturing that is like when we do that in community, which is cards on the table, no hidden agenda. That's our plan for September 11th to 13th, is to like reflect the love of God in community for our communities. And I wonder if that's part of recapturing and reflecting some of that love, is when we do it not just individually in my neighborhood, but collectively together as a group.
Our vision says we dream of being a movement of people who build bridges into our neighborhoods and the world because God has created a bridge of love to us. And the sermon this week was Bridges of Love. So we're talking all about these bridges. And so we have this vision, and then we also have these community parties that are coming up, or I think they're coming up, right? That's about a month. Yeah. It's hard to think that they're coming up really quick, but they are. So we have these two things. How do community parties help us fulfill our vision?
This. Yeah, we talked about this before, like we get to equip and support. That's one of the things that we get to do. So when we have this idea, like we want our church to be about this. This is really important to us. This is our goal. Then the idea is like, let's come up with ideas of ways we can do this. And this is a way to kickstart this for us. Like we want you to be planted. You're planted already in a place. You just are. So let's just find creative ways for us to think of ways to kickstart relationship for people. So I think this is one of the ways. You might live in a neighborhood and you're BFFs with your neighbors around there, and this is just another way you get to celebrate with them. Or you may not know one person's name and are going to go have the awkward conversation, but it's okay. Jared says it's okay to be awkward.
Yeah, be awkward so they don't have to be. And I'm gonna, like in our neighborhood, we're gonna have to do this because I think what we're toying with the idea is, because we want to be somewhere we can access electricity in case we have somebody come and do some music for us. So we're looking at getting a permit to close our street, which means I need to get the signatures of everybody on our block. So I'm gonna have to go door to door and actually meet neighbors, and that's not my. It feels a bit awkward to me, but because I have a purpose for it now, I can totally do it. We'll invite them to the party, tell them what we're doing, and they're totally invited to come and be a part of that. And it'll get me out there. So yeah, it's one way that the community parties are helping fulfill the vision, is forcing me to knock on a couple doors in my neighborhood, which is great. Yeah.
I can tell you, I mean, I've done it in my neighborhood here right as COVID was getting started here, just knocking on people's doors. and getting them to, sign up on our neighborhood Facebook page here, the ones that hadn't signed up already. They love that. People don't look at it as weird once they recognize you're not a door-to-door salesman, and they're not. And door-to-door salesmen aren't that ubiquitous anymore. And I guess also if you're not like Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, but you walk around your neighborhood there, you knock on their door, they're happy to see their neighbors and get to know you a little bit, even if they don't and they didn't know who I was. But they just greeted me with a big happy smile on their face, even in the midst of this. So, yeah, it was awkward for me, but not so much for them. Not at least that they showed anyways.
Yeah, that's good. We found actually this is just the reality of the situation. You may find this when you're reaching out to your neighbors. We found that there's people that won't answer their door. Mm-hmm. We know they're home, but they won't come to the door. And we were just delivering Christmas baking, and we were like, we know you're in there, but won't come to the door. So it's just there'll be all kinds of barriers along the way, but it's worth us taking those steps.
Sometimes the anticipation of things is the piece to get over. It's just in our heads that we don't do this, but once you do it, I mean, I remember even when I started at the church and you'd call someone that you didn't know. I had to get over that, and I'm outgoing. This is not so hard, but I think I understand. We all have different kinds of personalities, but it's good to get a little. It's like charging the battery. What's that called? The battery chargers. Jump your battery.
Jumper cables.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Need some jumper cable.
I really am not this dumb. I don't know. I can't. Anyway. The jumper cable. Just get a jumper cable. Just get this going.
Yeah.
It's okay. You don't need that for matchmaking. So.
Okay.
That's great.
Useless information.
I'm 50. You lose certain nouns when you turn 50.
Yeah. So a question here about community parties. Will we receive any instructions or information about community parties in our neighborhood?
I'll just answer that one. We were going to make that answer.
Matt, we want to hear.
I shared everything that I knew in the sermon today, which was roughly a minute and 30 seconds worth of information. And half of that was saying, if you have questions, contact Jeremy. So maybe.
Thanks, Matt. So the big thing that we're looking for is that we want to run this through point people in the neighborhood. So I'm basically looking for people in the neighborhood. And by neighborhood, again, just a reminder, we're looking at the defined neighborhoods as according to the Lethbridge map. Lakeview and I'm going to freeze up Redwood, and on the west side, there's some Southbrook, which isn't on the Lethbridge map. It's called something else, Fairmont, those places. It's coming back to me now. So, but basically those neighborhoods. And so once we have a identified leader, we'll send emails to everybody that we know that lives in that neighborhood, that attends our church, to give you some information and to invite you to participate in that. So yes, the information's coming, instructions are coming, but we're looking for leaders. That's our big thing. And really it's point people, just so you know. Yeah. Don't get too overwhelmed by the word leader.
So just to be clear, the emails haven't gone out yet.
No, because again, we're just in the recruitment stage of finding point people. There may be a couple neighborhoods that are looking to get together before that, just to pray and talk about the September 11th. There's maybe 2 neighborhoods aside from Lakeview that have got some information, but other than that, you are not missing your information yet.
Okay.
And our plan is once we start, once I identify the neighborhoods, is to make that public somewhere. So Levi and I will talk about communications, but to let people know, hey, something's happening in, what's the Riverstone or wherever.
You lost now too.
He's really trying to figure out the west side.
Copperwood. Crossings, Copperwoods. Yes, thank you.
Copperwood, just the biggest neighborhood in all of Lethbridge. So
Indian Battle Heights. So we'll let you know when things are happening there. So in case you're not on our email list, you'll know. We'll get you in touch with the leader and all that kind of stuff, so you get the information.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and if you follow along with the podcast, you will hear from us when you should have gotten the information. So then, if you don't have the information, then you can then call in and say, "Hey, we want something in our community as well." So, yeah.
And Levi, like I'd say, like I want to, we want to move on quickly. So if you're waiting to say like, "Hey, I'd be interested in being a point person," tomorrow would be a great time to let me know, so that we're training our leaders in this. So yeah.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our show for you guys. It's been a blast hanging out with you guys. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. Next week's going to look a little bit different because we got our Wonder Woman on holidays. We've got our head honcho, Jeff Heth, on holidays. But don't worry, there will be a few other people joining us for the podcast. We will make it happen. So until next week, see you guys later.
Have a
Bye, everyone.